خانم گلاله شرفکندی صحبت میکنن. ایشون فعال سیاسی و فعال مسائل زنان هستند. در مورد مسائل زنان کرد در ایران صحبت میکنن. 45 دقیقه وقت باقی مونده. از دو سخنران باقیمانده تقاضا میکنن که بین 10 تا 15 دقیقه صحبت کنن تا بتوانند دوستان هم در بحث مشارکت کنند. بفرمایید.
Okay, I know that it is really difficult to sum up and at the same time to cover all the topics. When I say I'm going to tell you about the situation, the general situation for Kurdish women in Iran, so it is somehow impossible, but I try my best. And to be able to give you the general or the overall picture, I begin with the framework, with the main framework. As the others who are sitting here presented different parts of the puzzle, the problems created or the problems which we as Iranian women face in the Iranian society regarding or trying to fighting for equality, they are coming from 5 main sources. The first one is from law and the regulation, the constitution. So the law enhances violence against women committed by men. So the law preaches or encourages a kind of segregation. This is the main source, which we share either as a Kurdish woman or as an Persian woman. It does not make any difference. The second source is coming from religion. If I tell you religion, we cannot consider it as an Islam, but it can be a kind of fundamentalist interpretation of religion to make or to create some barriers for women or achieving equality. Since the religion or a kind of interpretation of Sharia is the basis of law, so it has already enhanced this type of segregation. The third source is educational system and what has been educated or the next generation how will be treated and trained to behave and to participate in the society. You know that the educational materials, not only the policy, but the materials. In the materials, it is educated, it preaches a kind of patterns based on segregation. And they are going to plan a new book, which is the one which will be used for girl is different from the one which will be used for the boy. Because the patterns which are supposed to be internalized are different because the base is women and men are different. And this is the base of that society. The fourth source is economy. You know that, you have heard from my colleagues that more than 65% of those who enter the universities in Iran are female, are women. But at the same time, when you look at the labor market, you see a big difference. You know, still it is less than 30% of those who have the access to a job are female in Iran. And I do not go to details when it comes to the security of job and all those things, salary and all other type of, talking about equality. So the fifth source is culture, if we can call it culture, or I try to limit it as a patriarchal customs, which will be interpreted as culture. It is not the culture. So while the overall, the women, the Iranian women share those problems, but at the same time, when we come to the minorities, those who live not in Tehran, in the center of Iran, they face some extra elements make the situation even worse for them. When we come to the borders, those provinces which are in the border, you see the economic deprivation, a situation of unemployment, which has a direct influence on the women, which must take care of the economy of the family, and who must be subjected to a kind of conflict in the family. So that the situation is even worse for the minorities. And when you come to the educational system, the educational system gives you some pattern which preaches inequality or segregation. But here, in those areas, you have a kind of ethnic minorities who does not even know the language. So they cannot associate themselves with the pattern, first because of the problems with the pattern, and second because of not knowing or understanding the language, not being able to associate themselves with that pattern coming from Tehran. It is completely a different story here in Kurdistan, in Balochistan, or in Azerbaijan, or in Khuzestan. So, and the third source making the situation even worse for the minorities is the cultural codes or some traditions. And I do not want to explain all of them, but I want to narrow down the topic going or coming to Kurdish women. When you come to the Kurdish women, Kurdistan is a province which has been intentionally keeping in poverty, intentionally by the government. But why? Because of some active political parties, Kurdish political parties, that the view of the government or regime toward that province is a security type of view, trying to keep people in poverty because they want to somehow limit and take the control over the political, ideas, requests, or even dreams of those people. So they keep them in poverty. And yesterday in the previous session, we have heard about white genocide. Do you know what is white genocide? The regime intentionally distribute drug in the Kurdish provinces of Iran because they want the young generation to be addicted and somehow to lose their power of thinking, being active, thinking about things, all those things. And there are evidences, if you need, we can provide the evidences that this is the regime who distribute or is behind the distribution of drug with a very cheap price. So, keeping in poverty, white genocide, and there is another problem in Kurdistan, or when we come to the Kurdish women, we have another problem. In Kurdistan, you consider or you associate the women as your homeland. So women are supposed to preserve the honor of the nation, the honor of the Kurdish nation. So the male have the responsibility of protecting or defending their homeland. The women is symbolized for that homeland from the enemies somehow trying to come into it. So because of this, the topic of honor or preserving honor comes into picture. When you talk about those women, the very high rate of women committing suicide in Kurdistan part by putting themselves into fire, by burning themselves. So it is coming from both, from all those factors, from a society, a very power society, from a society where the women are supposed to keep the honor of the nation, where the women are crying for help. And this is not just committing suicide. This is a cry for help from the international community that we are subjected to so many factors not being able to be heard by the outside world. So, and another part is just the feminism in Kurdistan. When we talk about feminist activists in Kurdistan, this is another source of problem. The feminism or feministic type of activists are born or have been born inside Kurdistan political parties. So it is like this. When we look at that movie, when the overall Iran was talking about the veil or obligatory veil, in Kurdistan it was a completely different story. We were talking about national identity, finding our national identity. When from the very beginning of the regime coming into power, announced a kind of fight against enemy and diverged from the very beginning. And since there is a kind of misunderstanding or lack of channel of communication, I think now the main problem is coming from this lack of communication between feminist activists in Kurdistan and feminist activists in Tehran. Since the main problem for us is the national identity, okay, beside that problems which we consider as the women problem, and since the general Iranian feminist activist does not see that picture and try just to feel a kind of pity for us, this creates a kind of barrier. You know, they do not know so much about the situation. They try, but since there is no channel for being able to communicate with each other, I can say the Kurdish women face a situation, a very unbearable situation, especially when the other partners cannot understand them. So just to add this point, just to add this point, when you talk about activists in Iran, Kurdish activists face a harsh or very hard type of sentences in prison, and the human rights activists cannot talk about them because they have been connected by the government to those active Kurdish political parties outside the border. This is the policy of the government, outside the border and connected to the foreigners. So they do not have anybody to talk about them. And when we talk about Kurdish women, it is about circumcision, it is about committing suicide, it is about exchange of women, it is about those things. It is not about our